Hello and welcome, I'm Raziel, and so today, not really a complaining video today, not a rant, just something that I enjoy, something that I happen to like, something that makes me enthusiastic about wargaming. Now, it's actually one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of historical wargaming per se. I mean, I do enjoy bolt action, it's a fantastic and a fun game, but this is one of the things I'm not a big fan of when it comes to that particular genre of wargaming, and that is imagination. Now, I love the fact when a company really goes out of their way, I should say, to be imaginative with their systems or their lore or their games or whatever. It's just something I really enjoy. Now, I've said before that fantasy as a genre in wargaming tends to be the worst for this. They out of, again, ignoring historical, out of the fictional universes, fictional wargaming, fantasy tends to be the one that kind of suffers the most, mainly because fantasy has been about for centuries. Goblins, elves, dwarves, all these races have been well imbued into our society and our cultural norms, that for a war game to be imaginative in that sense, they have to really break the mold. Yes, you got to have dwarves, you got to have goblins, you got to have orcs, you got to have elves, etc., and etc., and they always end up being the same. This isn't saying that's a bad thing, it's just something that happens to be. It is what it is. However, because, as you know, I've started playing Conquest, and this is one of the reasons I really enjoy Conquest. They have no goblins as I can see of as of yet. That's not to say they're not going to have any, but they do have orcs, dwarves, and elves. Okay, and the dwarves are kind of just like normal dwarves, really, but with some more, I don't know, some sort of mechanical aspect. Like, it's different but the same. That's the best way I can really put their Dwaecom. They are different but the same. And whereas the orcs and the elves of Conquest, which would be the Radvun and the Spires, are basically two good factions. I'm really finding it hard to actually choose a faction for Conquest right now. I've enjoyed building and using my Spires. I'm painting some Old Dominion at the moment, and I'm going to be painting some Radvun because of a 2-player bulk set. So, but when it comes to Radvun, the Conquest orcs, okay, they are orcs, but they are not the big, beefy, muscly bound. They are muscles. They look very strong. They look like bodybuilders, but not to the same degree as, say, the 40k orcs or the Kings of War orcs. They look more human in their anatomy. They don't have the hunched shoulders, I should say. Their head tends to be quite high up, and they really love dinosaurs. Yeah, they ride dinosaurs, not just fictional dragons like wyverns, but T-Rexes, Brontosauruses. It might be a Brachiosaurus, but I think it actually is a Brachiosaurus, actually. And they even have Compsognathus, or Compsognathi. God, it's a hard word to say. Anyway, the little tiny ones as well. These are models that you can use for the Radron, which makes it really fascinating that Conquest has kind of added that element. And you've got like dinosaur skulls on their shoulders and stuff. Like, they really revere these terrible lizards, and I think that's absolutely enjoyable to have that kind of new spin on the orc race. They still are very much orcs. They're still very warlike. They still keep all the stereotypes of orc: green skin, warlike, savage, etc., but they now add dinosaurs into the mix, and just that little extra twist on a familiar race really does add a lot more to them, a lot more than you'd expect. And then you got the elves, which they completely went off the rails with, I should say, and they are from space, and that's what makes them really interesting. They crashed on EA, or EE, or it's spelled EA, challenge everything, and then they come from space. They ran away. They have this weird hierarchy, and then they also clone their enemies. Like, they don't really torture their enemies. They just, when they take over a planet, they wipe everyone out, then clone them to work for them. Like they are just mindless drones. And this sort of thing really changes the elves, but it also keeps their real arrogance to them as well. They're so much better than anyone else. They don't have to go to war, they don't have to fight. They'll just clone the enemy and make them fight for them. Nothing says arrogance like actually cloning your enemies just to be mindless drones to work for you. But they're so far lesser than you, they're just mindless drones in your eyes, and you even make them that way. Again, this twist on the elvish lore is something else, and they are absolutely gruesome. Some of their artwork for the spires and is really cool. It's like lots of bones and stuff, and there's like flayed skin which has been stretched out, and all this is really horrific stuff. And they're not dark elves, they're not torturous elves. You know, these are meant to be just your everyday elf, but they are absolutely completely different from the rest. So that's Conquest, and that's what kind of drives me to Conquest. And then you have things like the undead Romans, which are cool. You have the city-states, which are the Greeks. You have, it's kind of Arthurian knights, but more inclined to actual proper medieval knights. A bit, not Bretonians as such, because you can have like St. George leading your army and stuff like that. And then you got the Sorcerer's Kings, which is all about Arabia and the Arabian Nights. So you have Jinn there. And you have the Nords, which are basically werewolves. And the Nords stole the Greek gods, where you can actually use Hephaestus as a model. So you have this race, which is very struck in... it's like they use historical for the humans. Like the Nords, the city-states, the Sorcerer Kings, the Old Dominion. So they use history for them. And then they kind of add the fantasy and the folklore of those stories and add them to them, but sort of mix it up as well. Like Hephaestus is a model for the Nords, and I think that's a really cool sort of thing, seeing as Hephaestus is pretty much a Greek god. I'm sure there is a Nordish god which has, I think it's evolved from the Nords, but I might be wrong or got that completely different, or it might even be the Romans. But again, you have this twist on what was normal human folklore changed for this game. The same with the Jinn. Again, the Jinn wouldn't look like the genies as you would see them in pantomimes, but they act like the genies in the Arabian Night tales and the stories from Arabia and the Middle East. They act like those Jinn, but look like what we would expect a genie to look like at the same time. And this sort of stuff really sort of gets with me, and I love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to do next week, I'm going to do Wild West Exodus and how they do it as well, because I don't want to go on too much, but Conquest and Para-bellum games have really shown how to take something and twist it into something new while keeping its main DNA there for everyone to see. Like, if you see Varadron, you see orcs. If you see the spires, you see elves. If you see the Draegholm, you see dwarves. Like, again, you see these... Thousand Kingdoms, you see the knights of medieval times, but again, it's got that spin on it of how they're not quite. They are different, but the same. I love that phrase, different, but the same. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I love you all, guys, as always. I hope you're all having a lovely day. I hope you got this far. And I'll see you all in the next one. And, of course, if you wish to save some money on your Warhammer Wargaming Conquest, as down below, you can go to Whaling Games with up to 20% off and free delivery after £20. Their warbands for First Blood are absolutely fantastic bargain, and there is Forbidden Planet for, you know, all your cool geeky merchandise, comics, toys, plushies, shirts, etc. Then there also my merchandise as well, for, you know, my t-shirts, stickers, cups, bags, and my comics. If you want to see Little Red Riding Hood go absolutely ham on some cyborg werewolves. There is also what else is there? Skyforge. Don't forget Skyforge. Never mind. A good friend of mine. Let's get him up in that Google algorithm. And finally, Patreon, because business. Bye bye.